Welcome to Buddha's Healing, a peaceful place where we gently explore the timeless wisdom of the Buddha and discover how a calmer heart can create a gentler life, no matter our age. Dear friends, have you ever noticed something curious? Two people may be the very same age. Both are over 60. Both have lived through joy and sorrow. Both have known love, loss, success, disappointment. Yet somehow, they grow older in completely different ways. One person seems peaceful. Their face carries softness. Their words are gentle. Their presence brings calm. Even though life has not been easy, the other person may carry constant tension, bitterness, restlessness, worry. The body feels tired, the heart feels heavy, and every passing year seems to deepen the suffering. Why does this happen? Is it simply luck? Good health? Money? Better circumstances? Perhaps those things play a part. But the Buddha gently invited us to look somewhere deeper. He taught that, while we cannot always choose what happens to us, we can slowly learn how we meet what happens, and that changes everything. Please hear this gently. Growing older is not the same as growing wiser. Years alone do not create peace. Time alone does not heal suffering. Without awareness, the heart may simply carry the same fear, the same anger, the same regrets, for decades. But with mindfulness, even the later years of life can become lighter, kinder, more spacious. Perhaps some people listening today have quietly wondered, why does aging feel so difficult? Or perhaps another question has been whispering inside your heart, is it still possible to find peace now? Dear friends, the answer offered by the Buddha is wonderfully hopeful. Yes, because peace does not depend on having a perfect body, a perfect family, a perfect past. Peace begins much closer than that. It begins inside the way we hold this moment. Today, we will gently explore why some people over 60 seem to age with remarkable peace, while others quietly carry invisible suffering. Not to judge anyone, not to compare lives, but to discover what can still be transformed. Together, we will reflect on accepting change instead of fighting it, releasing comparisons with younger years, finding meaning beyond achievement, forgiving what no longer serves the heart, practicing gratitude, and discovering the quiet freedom that comes from letting life unfold without constantly resisting it. Before we continue, take one slow breath, allow your shoulders to soften, and gently ask yourself, what have I been resisting? Because sometimes, the greatest suffering is not caused by growing older. Sometimes, it is caused by fighting a season of life that is simply asking to be accepted. Dear friends, let us gently begin with the first quiet difference between people who age peacefully and those who quietly suffer. And that difference is accepting change instead of resisting it. Please hear this gently. Change is one of life's few certainties. The Buddha reminded us that all conditioned things are impermanent. Seasons change, bodies change, relationships change, circumstances change, and after 60, those changes often become easier to notice. Hair turns gray, the face becomes softer, the body asks for more rest, energy shifts, friends retire, children begin lives of their own. The world itself seems to move faster than before. For some people, these changes become constant reminders of loss. They quietly think, I don't feel like myself anymore. Everything used to be better. Life is slipping away, and little by little, resistance grows. The heart keeps asking life to return to a season that has already passed. Dear friends, how exhausting that becomes, trying to hold back time, trying to recreate yesterday, trying to remain exactly who we were 20 years ago. Please hear this gently. The suffering is often not created by change itself. It is created by fighting what cannot be stopped. The Buddha did not teach us to fear impermanence. He taught us to understand it, because when we understand that everything naturally changes, we begin holding life more gently. Today we gently reflect on something important. What if peace begins the moment we stop asking life to stay the same? Many people quietly believe that accepting change means giving up, but the Buddha offered a different understanding. Acceptance is not surrendering hope. Acceptance is seeing reality clearly. Imagine standing beside a river. You cannot stop the water from flowing. You cannot command it to return upstream. The more you fight it, the more exhausted you become. Life often moves in the same way. Youth becomes middle age becomes older age, children become parents become grandparents, strong bodies become gentler bodies. This is not failure, it is the rhythm of life. Yet many hearts quietly suffer because they keep comparing today with yesterday. The mind whispers, I used to walk faster, I used to remember everything, I used to look different, and without realizing it, comparison slowly steals gratitude. Please hear this gently. The person you were deserves love, but so does the person you are today. Emotionally peaceful people after 60 slowly begin learning something beautiful. Every season of life has something to teach. Youth teaches energy, middle age teaches responsibility, later life teaches wisdom, presence, compassion, the courage to let go. Imagine trying to hold autumn leaves on a tree. No matter how tightly you grasp the branches, the leaves will still fall. Not because something is wrong, but because the season has changed. Dear friends, perhaps your life is entering a different season too. Not worse, different, and different still holds beauty. Please hear this gently. You do not have to become younger to become more peaceful. You do not have to return to yesterday to discover joy. You only need the courage to meet today with an open heart. Perhaps tonight, you may gently ask yourself, what change have I been resisting? What season of life am I struggling to accept? What beauty might I discover if I stopped fighting what is already here? Because sometimes, healing begins not when life changes. Sometimes, healing begins when the heart gently changes its relationship with life. There was a woman named Margaret. She was 68 years old, living in a quiet neighborhood outside Vermont. For most of her life, Margaret had been full of energy. She loved hiking through the nearby forests, working in her garden, hosting family dinners, keeping every corner of the house spotless. She took pride in doing everything herself. If someone offered to help, she usually smiled and replied, "I'm fine, I can handle it." And for many years, she truly could. But slowly, almost without noticing, life began to change. Her knees became stiffer. Long walks left her tired. Reading required stronger glasses. She occasionally forgot where she had placed her keys. Simple tasks took a little longer. At first, Margaret fought every change. She pushed herself harder, refused help, compared every day to the woman she had been 10 years earlier. Whenever she looked in the mirror, she quietly thought, I don't recognize myself anymore. Whenever she climbed the stairs more slowly, she whispered, this shouldn't be happening. The more she resisted, the more frustrated she became. Her body grew tense. Her sleep became lighter. Even joyful moments seemed overshadowed by quiet disappointment. One afternoon, while resting on a park bench, she watched an elderly couple walking together. They moved slowly, holding hands, stopping often, smiling at birds, admiring flowers. There was no hurry, no frustration, just quiet contentment. Margaret found herself wondering, why do they seem so peaceful? A few weeks later, She attended a mindfulness gathering at her local community center. The teacher held up a single autumn leaf, golden, delicate, beautiful. Then he softly asked, "When did this leaf become less beautiful?" The room remained silent. He smiled gently. "It didn't. It simply entered a new season." Margaret felt something stir inside her. Then he added, "We suffer when we ask autumn to become spring again." Those words stayed with her, because suddenly she realized she had spent years arguing with reality. Not because she disliked getting older, but because she had never truly accepted it. She was grieving a season that had already passed. That evening, she sat quietly on her porch, watching leaves drift through the evening air. For the first time in a long while, she whispered, "Perhaps I don't need to become who I was." After a long pause, she smiled softly. "Perhaps I can learn to love who I am becoming." Nothing dramatic happened overnight. Her knees still ached. Her glasses were still necessary. The years did not suddenly disappear, but something inside her changed. She stopped measuring every day against the past. She accepted help when it was offered. She took slower walks without feeling embarrassed. She found joy in watching the sunrise instead of racing through her morning. She laughed more, rested more, judged herself less. Months later, her granddaughter Emily visited. While walking together through the garden, Emily smiled. "Grandma, you seem happier lately." Margaret looked across the flowers blooming in the afternoon sun, then quietly replied, "I finally stopped fighting the season I'm living in, and somehow everything became lighter." Dear friends, perhaps there is a Margaret somewhere inside many of us. Someone quietly resisting change, someone comparing today with yesterday, someone believing peace can only return if life becomes the way it once was. Please hear this gently. Every season carries its own beauty. Spring blossoms, summer grows, autumn ripens, winter rests. None is greater than another. Each simply asks something different from the heart. Perhaps aging is not asking you to become less. Perhaps it is inviting you to become gentler, wiser, more compassionate toward yourself. Perhaps tonight you may gently ask yourself, what season of life am I living in? Have I been fighting it or walking with it? Because sometimes the deepest peace arrives not when time slows down. Sometimes it arrives when the heart finally stops asking yesterday to return. If today's reflection touched your heart, please subscribe to Buddha's Healing and continue walking this gentle path of mindfulness, healing, and inner peace with us. And if you are learning to embrace a new season of life, perhaps leave a quiet comment below. Sometimes healing begins when we realize that every season has its own quiet beauty. Dear friends, let us gently move into the second quiet difference between people who age peacefully and those who quietly suffer. And that difference is letting go of comparison with younger years. Please hear this gently. Comparison is a quiet habit. It often arrives unnoticed. Especially after 60, a person looks at an old photograph. They remember the strength they once had, the speed with which they walked, the face they once saw in the mirror, the dreams they were still chasing, and almost without realizing it, the heart begins comparing. I used to have so much energy. I used to look better. I used to be more useful. I used to matter more. Dear friends, how quietly painful those thoughts become. Not because the past was bad, but because comparison slowly teaches the heart that today is somehow not enough. The Buddha gently reminded people that suffering often begins when the mind clings, not only to pleasant experiences, but also to old identities, to the version of ourselves we no longer are. Please hear this gently. There is nothing wrong with remembering your younger years. Memories can be beautiful. They remind us of love, adventure, family, growth. But memories become suffering when they turn into a measuring stick. When every day is judged against yesterday. When today's life is never allowed to be enough. Today we gently reflect on something important. What if peace begins when we stop competing with our younger selves? The Buddha often encouraged people to see clearly, to observe without judgment, to witness life as it is, not as we wish it had remained. How often does this happen? Someone sees an old photograph and quietly thinks, "I was happier then." Someone struggles to climb the stairs and whispers, "I hate getting old." Someone notices a new wrinkle and immediately feels sadness. Yet, dear friends, what if the sadness is not created by the wrinkle? What if it is created by the comparison? Because comparison quietly says, "I can only appreciate today if it looks like yesterday." And that is a difficult burden to carry. The Buddha taught that every moment is new, every breath, every sunrise, every season. If we remain attached to an earlier version of ourselves, we miss the quiet gifts waiting in the present. Emotionally peaceful people, after 60, slowly discover something beautiful. They stop asking, "How can I become who I used to be?" and begin asking, "Who is this season inviting me to become?" Imagine standing before a beautiful oak tree. Would you ask it to become a young sapling again? Of course not. Its beauty comes from the years it has lived. Its strength comes from every season it has survived. Its branches tell the story of time. Dear friends, perhaps your life is like that tree, the lines on your face, the gray in your hair, the wisdom in your eyes. None of these are signs of losing life. They are signs of having lived it. Please hear this gently. Your worth has never depended upon your youth. It has always rested in your humanity, your kindness, your compassion, your ability to love, and those gifts can continue growing with every passing year. Perhaps tonight, you may gently ask yourself, have I been comparing myself to someone I no longer need to be? What strengths has this season quietly given me? Can I honor the person I was while fully embracing the person I am today? Because sometimes, healing begins the moment we stop measuring life by what has faded and begin noticing all that has quietly blossomed. There was a man named Richard. He was 71 years old, living quietly in a small coastal town outside Maine. For most of his life, Richard had been known as an energetic man. He loved hiking, working with his hands, fixing almost anything around the house. His children often joked that he could never sit still, even after retirement. He imagined himself staying exactly the same, strong, independent, always capable. But life, as it always does, slowly began to change. His shoulders became stiffer. His balance was not what it had once been. He tired more easily after long walks. One afternoon, while cleaning the garage, he found an old photograph. He was 35, standing on the summit of a mountain, smiling beside his wife, Linda, a backpack on his shoulders, the sky bright behind them. Richard stared at the picture for a long time, then quietly whispered, "I miss that man." From that day on, something subtle changed. Every morning became another comparison. If he needed more time to stand up, he remembered how quickly he once moved. If he forgot a name, he criticized himself. If he became tired after gardening, he silently felt disappointed. Without realizing it, he stopped appreciating who he was, because he kept measuring himself against someone from decades earlier. Linda noticed. One evening, while watching the sunset together, she softly asked, "You've been awfully quiet lately." Richard smiled faintly. "I just don't feel like myself anymore." Linda looked at him gently. "Which version of yourself?" The question surprised him. "What do you mean?" She reached for his hand. The 35-year-old? The 50-year-old? The 60-year-old? Or the man sitting beside me right now? Richard didn't answer, because honestly, he had never thought about it that way. Weeks later, Linda encouraged him to attend a mindfulness class she had recently joined. Reluctantly, he agreed. During one session, the teacher placed 3 photographs on a table, one of a child, one of a young adult, one of an elderly woman. Then he quietly asked, "Which one is the real person?" The room became silent. After a long pause, the teacher smiled. All of them. None needed to compete with the others. Richard felt something soften. Then the teacher continued, "Suffering begins when we ask today's self to become yesterday's self." Those words settled deeply inside him, because suddenly, Richard realized he had been living in quiet competition with his own past. Every wrinkle became failure. Every slower step became loss. Every change became evidence that something valuable had disappeared. But perhaps nothing valuable had disappeared. Perhaps it had simply changed form. That evening, Richard walked slowly along the beach. The waves rolled gently onto the shore. The tide came in. The tide went out. No wave tried to become the one before it. Each simply arrived, then let go. Standing there, he whispered softly, "Maybe I don't need to become who I was." After a long breath, he added, "Maybe I can become fully who I am." From that day forward, small things began changing. He stopped criticizing his slower pace. He enjoyed shorter walks, spent more afternoons reading with Linda, instead of proving he could still do everything alone. He laughed more easily, rested without guilt, and somehow, the comparisons slowly disappeared. Months later, his grandson Noah visited. While they sat together watching the ocean, Noah smiled and said, "Grandpa, I like spending time with you." Richard smiled warmly. "Even though I can't climb mountains anymore?" Noah laughed. "I don't need a mountain. I just need you." In that quiet moment, Richard understood something the Buddha had gently pointed toward all along. Worth is not measured by youth. Love is not measured by strength. Peace is not measured by what has been lost. It grows from accepting what is here. Dear friends, perhaps there is a Richard somewhere inside many of us. Someone quietly comparing today's life with yesterday's. Someone believing peace can only return if the past somehow returns too. Please hear this gently. Your younger self deserves gratitude, but your present self deserves compassion. Every season has shaped you. Every season has given something. Perhaps the greatest gift of later life is not greater strength, but greater wisdom, greater patience, greater tenderness. Perhaps tonight, you may gently ask yourself, am I honoring the person I am today, or am I quietly competing with someone I no longer need to be? Because sometimes, the heart begins healing the moment it stops longing to become younger and finally begins appreciating the beautiful person it has become. Dear friends, as we gently come to the end of today's reflection, perhaps the quiet truth beneath everything we explored is this: growing older does not automatically create suffering. The years themselves are not the enemy. Time is not the enemy. The Buddha gently reminded us that suffering often grows not because life changes, but because the heart resists those changes. Today, we reflected on why some people over 60 age with remarkable peace, while others quietly carry invisible burdens. We explored the courage to accept change instead of fighting it, the freedom that comes from releasing comparisons with younger years, the wisdom of finding purpose beyond achievement, the healing that begins with forgiveness, the quiet strength of gratitude, and the discovery that lasting peace comes not from perfect circumstances, but from a heart that has learned to let go. Please hear this gently. every one of us will grow older. Every one of us will experience change. Every one of us will eventually face loss. The question is not whether these seasons will arrive. The question is, how will we meet them? With resistance or with understanding? With fear or with compassion? With endless comparison or with quiet acceptance? Dear friends, perhaps this season of life is not asking you to become someone new. Perhaps it is inviting you to become more fully yourself. The self beneath achievement, the self beneath appearance, the self beneath old expectations, the quiet heart that has always been there. The Buddha taught that peace is not something we chase. Peace is something we uncover. It has been waiting quietly beneath fear, beneath regret, beneath resentment, beneath all the stories we tell ourselves about who we should still be. And perhaps the later years of life offer a beautiful opportunity, not to hold tighter, but to soften, not to accumulate more, but to carry less. Less anger, less comparison, less worry, less regret, more gratitude, more presence, more kindness, more gentle awareness. Please hear this gently. You do not need a younger body to have a peaceful heart. You do not need perfect health to experience gratitude. You do not need a flawless past to live wisely today. This very breath, this very moment, still holds the possibility of peace. Perhaps tonight, before sleep, place a gentle hand over your heart. Take one slow, unhurried breath, and quietly ask yourself, what have I been resisting? What can I begin accepting with kindness? What would become lighter if I stopped fighting this season of my life? Because sometimes, the greatest transformation does not happen when life becomes easier. Sometimes, it happens when the heart becomes softer. If today's reflection brought even a small sense of comfort, please subscribe to Buddha's Healing and continue walking this gentle path of mindfulness, healing, and inner peace with us. And if this season of life has taught you something beautiful, perhaps share it in the comments below. Your quiet wisdom may become the encouragement another heart has been searching for. May you greet each new season with courage. May your heart grow lighter with every breath, and may the wisdom of the Buddha gently guide you toward a life of compassion, acceptance, and lasting peace, one quiet moment at a time.